Stephen Magee quotes that speak to the COVID-19 pandemic. Go to the bank looking like a bank robber. I enjoy shopping in a hazmat suit so much that I may continue to do so after the COVID-19 pandemic is over. COVID-19 enabled people to go to the bank looking like robbers. Hazmat suits became fashionable, and social distancing was the norm. Protecting workers may get you illegally fired in the USA. The reason why COVID-19 was so bad in the USA is attributed to a lack of pandemic preparation by the government. COVID-19 will pass after you go bankrupt, lose your home and car, and end up on the streets. The biggest environmental change I noticed during COVID-19 was the absence of airplanes in the sky. COVIDiot. Definition: a person that does not isolate during a pandemic. You are governed by incompetence. I give the government and medical profession an F for failing to prepare for a COVID-19 pandemic that they knew was coming. I have spent over a decade observing the government and concluded they are willfully incompetent in the health and safety of their citizens. The COVID-19 homeless epidemic is coming. COVID-19 is like Russian roulette, as it only occasionally kills infected people. The USA is a really messed up country. Do not be a COVIDiot. The government failed to learn from the previous coronavirus outbreaks around the world. Make America safe again. If the choice is dying from COVID-19 or surviving by wearing a hazmat suit, a gas mask, and goggles to the shops, I choose the latter. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I would rather take too many safety precautions than too few. If COVID-19 was named after the country where it wreaked the most havoc, it would be called the American virus. Stay home. COVID-19 is dividing the population into those with robust immune systems and those that have immune dysfunction. Are you a COVIDiot? It is important that nurses and doctors know that failing to use legally required health and safety protocols with COVID-19 patients may invalidate their disability and life insurance policies. It is illegal for your employer to expect you to work without personal protective equipment, PPE, in hazardous environments. The innocent put their faith into their government, whereas the smart do their own research and adopt protective lifestyle changes based on biological science. It is important that doctors and nurses understand that willfully using non-sterile personal protective equipment, PPE, may be used to deny their COVID-19 workers' compensation claim. Illegally firing whistleblowers is standard practice in the USA. The human immune system is tied into the seasons. If I were a doctor or nurse and I showed up to the hospital and found they had no sterile personal protective equipment, PPE, I would go to the staff room and wait until the health and safety issues were resolved. I was denied my disability payments and my workers' compensation, and now I am being hunted down by a mutant killer virus. I may have had mild COVID-19. I started shivering with an elevated heart rate on Sunday, and I was in bed on Friday with nausea, nerve pains, and a big headache that I treated with Tylenol and Alka-Seltzer. During the following days I had dizziness and nerve pains that slowly cleared up. I was unable to get tested for COVID-19 in the USA, so I will never know for sure. The USA is turning into South Korea, as many people now wear COVID-19 face masks in public. COVID-19 puts people through hell before taking them to heaven. Dying alone is the reality of COVID-19. In 4 months, COVID-19 shut down the world's economies. Keep calm and ignore President Trump. Dying from COVID-19 asphyxiation will take you on a journey through forgetfulness, confusion, hallucinations, and visions as you ascend into heaven. Doctors and nurses are brave souls during a pandemic. The bulk of the population is expected to eventually get COVID-19. Pearl Harbor, the 9/11 attacks, and the COVID-19 pandemic are all classic examples of USA government failures. You know something is going very wrong when the government pandemic official resigns their position during a pandemic. It is very hard to get tested for COVID-19 in the USA. Before you pledge allegiance, you should thoroughly examine your government to see if you are comfortable with doing so. During COVID-19, many doctors and nurses saw more people die than in their entire careers. The USA government is up to so many shady things that it makes me ashamed to admit to being an American citizen. The next time you are pledging allegiance, I want you to remember that your government really messed up on COVID-19. COVID-19 is the catastrophe of unemployment. COVID-19, also known as the apocalypse, COVID-19 turned the USA into the gizzard jobber society. There is a big difference between America first and Americans first. I ordered food takeout during COVID-19, and I was shocked at the dozen unmasked people that were in line waiting for their orders. I never did takeout again. Hello COVID-19. Hello unemployment. Hello COVID-19. Goodbye health insurance. Hello COVID-19. Goodbye job. The COVID-19 pandemic created massive unemployment. COVID-19 has ended many lives far too soon. COVID-19 has ended the American dream for the unemployed. Prepare to die and hope to live. Keep calm and isolate. America's worst mass shooting, historic flooding, and the worst pandemic in a century have all occurred in just a few years. Keep calm and write your last will and testament. Keep calm and say your last goodbyes to the world. The medical profession telling the masses not to wear protective face masks during the COVID-19 pandemic is just bad advice. Do yourself a favor and wear a protective face mask. The COVID-19 pandemic will probably go into 2021. Are you comfortable with pledging allegiance to a government that failed to prepare for a pandemic? I will remember the COVID-19 pandemic as the biggest government cock-up ever. If you feel that your employer is putting your health at serious risk of COVID-19 infection, you should file an u.S.A complaint and consider resigning your job. The disposal of millions of U.S.A workers by corporate America during the COVID-19 pandemic is one of the sickest things I have ever witnessed. Laying off millions of U.S.A employees causes them to lose their health insurance, leading to medical bills of tens of thousands of dollars for those unlucky enough to contract the serious symptoms of COVID-19. Firing millions of U.S.A employees and leaving them with no health insurance is akin to feeding them to the COVID-19 lions. I have stared death in the face so many times that COVID-19 is just a blip on the radar. Keep calm and shop the internet. Are you working yourself into a COVID-19 grave? The COVID-19 pandemic has made abstaining from butt wiping fashionable. President Trump is the dangerous president. Do yourself a favor and ignore President Trump. Social distance like your life depends on it. If you have run out of lung ventilators, please give mine to someone under 40 with COVID-19. Stay at home or risk an encounter with the COVID-19 Grim Reaper. The ignorant hope they never get COVID-19, and the wise prepare for a possible future infection. President Trump's irrational and erratic behaviors regarding COVID-19 are expected to kill many Americans. COVID-19 may be the final nail in the coffin of the traditional store model as the isolated people of the world switch to internet shopping. Who are you going to trust regarding the COVID-19 pandemic? President Trump or the sickened residents of New York City? The massive COVID-19 outbreak in New York City demonstrated that dense urban environments are undesirable places for humans to live. President Trump's press conferences on the COVID-19 pandemic would be far more meaningful if he wore a dunce's hat and a Pinocchio nose. Suicidal tendencies are likely to increase during the COVID-19 pandemic. The fatalities of the COVID-19 pandemic are expected to lead to shortages of doctors and nurses. When walking hand in hand with COVID-19, you must remember from the moment we are born, it is our destiny to leave planet Earth at a time chosen by Mother Nature. It has been an entertaining 4 years with President Trump, and it is now time for the finale. Have faith that whatever the outcome of COVID-19, your spirit will be okay. COVID-19 paranoia may save your life. Have faith that COVID-19 will never kill your spirit. COVID-19 is connecting people to God. Greatest nation on earth? I do not think so. President Trump's financial market honeymoon is over. COVID-19 is devastating Hawaii's economy. COVID-19 may dole out justice to corrupt politicians. My response to the COVID-19 toilet paper shortage is to consume so much fiber that my poops come out as dense logs. Your government is dysfunctional. President Trump spent weeks spewing fake news about COVID-19. If COVID-19 is like Spanish flu, there will be a more severe resurgence in the fall of 2020. Resigning your job may be a better option than developing workplace COVID-19. There will be many orphan children by the time the COVID-19 pandemic is over. The French solved the problem of toilet paper shortages a long time ago, and called it the bidet. A toilet paper manufacturer's worst fear is that the masses will learn how to abstain from toilet paper use during the COVID-19 pandemic. The U.S.A. has cloned Russia's toilet paper business model. Abstain from butt wiping. It works for cats and dogs. Abstaining from butt wiping is the solution to the COVID-19 toilet paper crisis. Industry is in the process of shutting down due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and smart people will stock up on household essentials as the supply dwindles. While people like to talk about climate change and global warming, I prefer to talk about the fruition of these, which is human disease. The government's response to COVID-19 revealed them to be a shady group of scallywags. Those with common sense will live in the rural tropics during the COVID-19 pandemic. If the government had been set up to guarantee a minimum subsistence allowance to all adults and children, COVID-19 would not have caused so much mayhem. If I were in an essential job, I would be considering resigning to protect my health from COVID-19. President Trump has been gaslighting the masses regarding COVID-19. The 3 golden rules of COVID-19. 1. Isolate. 2. Isolate. 3. Isolate. I look to the U.S.A. government for reliable advice during a pandemic, but instead I got President Trump's jaded and unreliable personal opinions. I view everyone as a superspreader. My fellow citizens, you are a potential COVID-19 biohazard to me. You will see a lot of failed businesses before the COVID-19 pandemic is over. By mid-March 2020 in Tucson, Arizona, USA, the schools were closed due to COVID-19. How much has the USA spent on fighting the terrorism, and how much have they spent on fighting COVID-19? By mid-March, I was on COVID-19 lockdown in my home, due to being a high-risk individual with pre-existing conditions. By the time COVID-19 is over, the death toll will be comparable to war. Be prepared to lose some relatives and friends during the COVID-19 pandemic. Toilet paper has separated the masses into the haves and have-nots. You would have to be desperate to apply for a job in a hospital during the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 is a tsunami of financial catastrophe. The majority of COVID-19 deaths are males. Are you a superspreader? I feel very misled by the USA government regarding COVID-19. The UK government is mobilizing its manufacturers to build massive numbers of lung ventilators quickly, while the USA is expected to run out of them during the COVID-19 pandemic. Upset that you have lost your paycheck during the COVID-19 pandemic? Welcome to the world of millions of the disabled. Some survivors of COVID-19 are being left with lifelong health issues. The young are the silent carriers of COVID-19, and the older generation are the victims. I would not venture into government buildings during the COVID-19 pandemic. Is COVID-19 your final destination? The greatest nation on earth was not prepared for a pandemic. I rescheduled all my doctor's appointments to summertime to avoid doctor's offices during the COVID-19 pandemic. If you hibernate like a bear, entertain yourself with indoor hobbies, and wait for summertime t-shirt weather, you will probably avoid the serious effects of COVID-19. Attending doctor's offices during the COVID-19 pandemic is a very risky activity. Toilet paper, tissues, and flu medications are the COVID-19 stock picks. The government is failing on a massive scale regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. We are in the era of mutant killer viruses. It is nice to see COVID-19 exposing the blatant failures of the government. Hello COVID-19. Goodbye lungs. What kind of crazy person is going to donate their COVID-19 survival kit to the hospital? During COVID-19, you should keep a list of your medications and supplements with the dosages and times taken next to your bed in case you fall ill. Don't panic, just be at one with your destiny. Let the stock market collapse. By the time COVID-19 reached Tucson, Arizona, USA, it was springtime flowering season with 74 degrees warm and sunny days. Your lack of planning is not my problem. If they could, the USA would declare COVID-19 as a terrorist organization. President Trump is a dangerous optimist. If I were in the United Kingdom during COVID-19, I would be writing my last will and testament. I ignored President Trump during the early days of COVID-19 in the USA. My responsibility as a father to my young daughter during COVID-19 required me to ignore President Trump. COVID-19 is nasty. COVID-19 is influenza on steroids. I would only go to a doctor's office during COVID-19 if my life depended on it. Don't panic. Just enjoy your last days on planet Earth. COVID-19 makes me glad that I no longer work in hospitals. COVID-19 is the villain of 2020. COVID-19 is killing the elderly that commonly have malnutrition issues and hormone deficiencies. Too little, too late is a good summary of the USA response to COVID-19. I have no fear of COVID-19, as I have been comfortable with dying for years. The USA numbers regarding unemployment, the disabled, and COVID-19 are all artificially low. Middle-aged people are the bulk of what hospital emergency departments are seeing for COVID-19 in the USA. COVID-19 is expected to lead to a lot of vacancies in the workplace. COVID-19 is overwhelming hospitals and heaven. When the television doctors look worried talking about COVID-19, you know it is far worse than what they are saying. The most dangerous thing in your life is your government. Your government is addicted to corruption. The USA has been behaving like a third world country regarding COVID-19. Rational fear of COVID-19 may save your life. The USA COVID-19 statistics are inaccurate. The lackluster response by the USA to COVID-19 is comparable to what I observed in the u.S.A. health and safety system. To understand disease, you must understand the environment and history. To reduce your exposure to COVID-19, do the opposite of President Trump. You cannot trust the government. The COVID-19 lockdown did not affect me, as I had already been on the disability lockdown for 5 years. COVID-19, are you coming to get me? If I could fire President Trump for blatantly mishandling COVID-19, I would. COVID-19 has turned nursing into a very risky occupation. COVID-19 is not a good time to be a cashier. President Trump has spent weeks misleading the masses about the severity of COVID-19. If you want to avoid COVID-19, you avoid doctors. To all the people that approach me in the shops, please stay back at least 6 feet. Don't panic. Just have rational fear of COVID-19. COVID-19, also known as Mother Nature's revenge. 2020 is the year of isolation. Mother Nature and COVID-19 are in the process of electing the next president. Reducing ambient environmental radiation to the lowest levels possible would be prudent during the global COVID-19 pandemic. The Grim Reaper of COVID-19 is coming. I consider myself fortunate to own a lung ventilator during the COVID-19 global pandemic. 2020 is the year of the bear market. So few people are using the U.S.A. 5G wireless radiation system that it would be prudent to turn it off until the COVID-19 pandemic subsides. Most anti-science religious fundamentalist is now in charge of America's biggest science project, Oliver Marcus Malloy. Inside the mind of an introvert, you would not want to be in a state of malnutrition during a COVID-19 infection. COVID-19 is like 5G wireless radiation, as it will take a lot of people dying from it before the masses acknowledge it to be a problem. You would not want to be in hormone deficiency during a COVID-19 infection. COVID-19, the solution to the social security crisis. Cruise to COVID-19. If you are feeling that the government is misleading you, you are not alone. COVID-19. Are we going to die? To all my friends that have the unfortunate destiny of dying from COVID-19, it was nice knowing you. Toilet paper, disinfecting wipes, and bottled water all became COVID-19 gold. President Trump's COVID-19 infected staff are probably wondering if the China virus is going to maim or kill them. In October 2020, President Trump proved to the world that he should have worn a mask and socially distanced by contracting China virus. Do not become a victim of a lying president. It seems the medical profession neglected to inform President Trump not to engage in social media activities or make important decisions while infected with a nasty virus and under the influence of potent prescription drugs. October 2020 was by far the most interesting time of President Trump's time in office. President Trump, how is residing with the China virus working out for you? The big government lie in the early days of COVID-19. Do not wear a mask. It took less than a year from first detection of COVID-19 for it to rampage through the White House staff and the President of the U.S.A. The U.S.A. is likely to slip down the ranking of global superpowers after the COVID-19 pandemic has passed. COVID-19 is in charge of the White House. COVID-19 has elected itself as President of the U.S.A. Will Mother Nature let President Trump live, or will she kill him? President Trump's China virus infection inspired me to buy a full-face respirator that protects the eyes, nose and mouth from COVID-19. Karma, COVID-19 infecting a White House that was in China virus denial. After President Trump announced his China virus infection, I had quotes written for his possible death by COVID-19. A bicycle shortage occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. A home appliance shortage happened due to COVID-19. The environment is changing, and so are the viruses. While the world has been on COVID-19 lockdown, good things have been happening in the background that will eventually be revealed. You do not think a corrupt government is going to tell you the truth about President Trump's COVID-19 disease progression, do you? Many of us in the early days of COVID-19 realized there was a fool in the White House spewing lies to the masses. Given President Trump's extensive history of lies, it is unlikely the public will ever get to know how serious his COVID-19 infection was unless he dies. President Trump, how is COVID-19 working out for you? COVID-19 infection was karma for President Trump. People that blatantly mishandle a pandemic should not be surprised when they fall victim to it. There is a reason why COVID-19 is called a killer virus. President Trump versus COVID-19 is the greatest fight of 2020. President Trump, will he live or will he die? Do not behave like President Trump. Isolation is survival. The first wave of COVID-19 infection tends to be mild. It is the second wave that happens several days later that can be fatal. One of the things I really like about Costco is they have ignored the lies from a COVID-19 infected President Trump. The liar is in hospital with COVID-19. If President Trump is left disabled by COVID-19, do you think he will get his disability benefits? President Trump proved not wearing a mask during the COVID-19 pandemic is hazardous to health. COVID-19 infected President Trump is officially a COVIDiot. President Trump may have committed political suicide with COVID-19. Isolation is my COVID-19 insurance policy. A hazmat suit is my COVID-19 insurance policy for social activities. 1,000 dead Americans daily from COVID-19 tells me the medical profession is struggling. It is hard to watch the government's incompetence with COVID-19. During COVID-19 I was using my car so infrequently that I had to charge the battery every month to prevent it from going flat. America, what a toxic country you are. I am easy to spot in the store, as I am the one wearing the COVID-19 preventive hazmat suit. Fall and winter 2020-21 may be COVID-19 brutal. When people ask me why I wear a hazmat suit to the store, my response is always the COVID-19 is a killer virus, and I do not want to die. COVID-19 takes you to insanity and back. 2020 was the year of sickened university students. If you were not crazy before the COVID-19 pandemic, you may well be afterwards. We were fortunate when the COVID-19 pandemic hit that internet shopping had matured. COVID-19 makes people go crazy, and leaves some of its survivors with the gift of mental illness. You can blindly follow the advice of government, or you can do your own research to understand what is true and what is not. The latter may save your life. Some of the greatest discoveries are occurring during the COVID-19 pandemic. Smart people buy cheap and Chinese before the 2020-21 influenza season combines with COVID-19 to slow down production. Hang on tight, as we are going into the first full influenza season with COVID-19. It is almost certain that the 2020-21 influenza season, in conjunction with COVID-19, will slow production from China. People with common sense buy what they need prior to the anticipated rise in COVID-19 during China's 2020-21 influenza season. 2020 was the year of homeschooling. The COVID-19 pandemic was an excellent example of what the government does best: blatantly lying to their citizens. It is going to be a sad legacy of mankind that a group of toxic nerds destroyed society. The greatest enemy of U.S.A. citizens is their own government. The government is an embarrassment to its citizens. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention (CDC) is a COVID-19 disaster. Over 200,000 dead Americans can confirm the hazards of COVID-19. The COVID-19 lottery is in full swing. Are you feeling lucky? COVID-19 is bad for business. 2020 was the year we all regressed back to the 1800s and became fearful of killer viruses. The long-term health complications from COVID-19 are remarkably similar to what is being seen in long-term high-altitude workers. During COVID-19, home gym equipment became a top-selling item. We are all in this pandemic together. My dislike of the government was learned through experience. I was not surprised that the U.S.A., with its Wi-Fi, cell phones, computers, and indoor society, had one of the worst outbreaks of COVID-19 in the world. COVID-19 caused a lumber shortage in 2020. 2020 was the year I bought a gallon of hand sanitizer. COVID-19 is a respiratory pandemic. Circadian rhythm disorder was a health risk during the COVID-19 lockdown. Natural light deficiency is a biological hazard when countries lock down their populations. The last plague before COVID-19 occurred over a century ago when there was little man-made wireless radiation, no man-made satellites, or widespread electrification of homes, and it lasted 2 years. Factoring in the environmental exposures from modern technologies, this pandemic may last much longer. Smart people stay home when the COVID-19 lockdown ends. Trust the government on COVID-19, and your life may be in danger. If I know I will be around large numbers of people, I will wear a hazmat suit. COVID-19 devours you from the inside. The government is like a toxic virus. 2020 was the year of masks. COVID-19 is expected to increase the rates of disease in the survivors. Hello COVID-19. Hello intensive care. My assumption with COVID-19 is I will be infected at some point, and to ensure my body is prepared for it by taking antiviral supplements. Many people traded their toxic jobs for their lives during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many people put their jobs first, and their lives second during the COVID-19 pandemic. In March 2020, the city of Tucson went into COVID-19 lockdown. 2020 was the year of hermits. In March 2020, hospitals in Tucson were using social media to beg for essential supplies. Is the person wearing the hazmat suit crazy? Or are they the smartest person around? Lung ventilators are the COVID-19 treatment, and isolation combined with taking supplements prior to infection is the prevention. Traveling to New York City during COVID-19 was like traveling to Chernobyl. The reason why I wear a hazmat suit when interacting with people is that I do not trust the government regarding COVID-19. COVID-19 turned me into a germaphobe. In 2020, the U.S.A. became the new Russia. Insanity has its advantages. I am the electromagnetic radiation guru. COVID-19 may cause a shortage of doctors and nurses due to students not wanting to enter the biologically hazardous profession. The development of space was followed by mutant viruses and a global pandemic. The bees are dying and humans are not far behind. The American dream is using food stamps. The American dream is claiming unemployment benefits. Come and get me, COVID-19. Doctors and nurses are among the most irradiated professions. You have the freedom not to isolate and to possibly contract fatal COVID-19 in the USA. The American dream is at the food bank. The American dream is on a ventilator at the hospital. The government will tell you that 5G wireless radiation is not connected to COVID-19 because its biologically toxic business model relies on 5G. I call the USA government the poverty government. The USA I am familiar with is ran by scallywags. We are in the era of the great lies. Memorial Day 2020 was spent remembering almost 100,000 dead Americans from COVID-19. Plan to retire in ill health and hope to retire in good health. A hazmat suit is like a walking sauna. Go beyond reality through insanity. Shut down space. The realities of nursing are that they work in environments which are typically filled with toxic air, toxic light, high levels of radiation, and potentially deadly infectious agents. Complex problems often have simple solutions. Regarding health and safety issues, never trust the government. 2020 was the year of obsessive hand washing. Your own government is the most dangerous entity you will ever encounter. Hang in there, as better times are ahead. Some of the television doctors may kill you if you let them. There are many forms of electromagnetic radiation that should never have been deployed on a global population. Your government is irradiating you with biologically toxic electromagnetic radiation. Regarding 5G wireless radiation, how much has been spent advertising the biologically toxic technology to the masses, and how much has been spent researching 5G radiation sickness? COVID-19 is the greatest social challenge in a century. COVID-19, mass unemployment, and guns are a very interesting combination. Are you living an existence, or are you living a life? I am committed to shutting down the biologically toxic space industry. 2020 was the year America rationed toilet rolls. The government sent me $1,200 for the inconvenience of the COVID-19 pandemic. The future of your children is depending on you voting for the Green Party. It is your legal right to pursue the closure of the biologically toxic space industry that is harming over 7 billion people on planet Earth. During COVID-19, the information on social media was far more reliable than the government. COVID-19 has made shaking hands a fond memory of the past. The government is reliably unreliable. It is getting difficult to discern the biological effects of natural radiation from unnatural man-made radiation. COVID-19 can be your best friend by giving you immunity, or your worst enemy by destroying your health and possibly killing you. It is not a good idea to be dating during COVID-19. My body is ready for COVID-19 infection. Is yours? Every day was a Sunday during the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic reminded us of how life was before vaccinations. The COVID-19 pandemic reminded us of how life was before vaccinations. Jesus, Mom, put on some clothes. COVID-19 is the modern version of the Spanish flu. 2020 was the year the medical profession conveniently ignored over a century of cross-infection techniques. COVID-19 is the nightmare of life insurance companies. Do you trust a government that failed to prepare for the COVID-19 pandemic? During COVID-19, laptop computers became a hot commodity. A lack of COVID-19 personal protective equipment (PPE) is burying our healthcare heroes. COVID-19 is expected to increase the divorce rate.